Hello, and welcome to A Smart Financial Plan, where we interview the best and brightest in financial planning research on their studies and the best practices financial planners can use with their clients. Today, we're interviewing Dr. Preston Cherry at the University of Wisconsin. Dr. Cherry has conducted research on the Big Five behavioral characteristics and their impacts on decisions to mitigate risk, from risk of unexpected death to a decline in physical capabilities, illness, or injury. Dr. Cherry is a great researcher, and I think you'll enjoy his recommendations on how to better equip clients to manage the risk in their financial plans. Well, Dr. Cherry, thank you so much for being with us here on the podcast today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you're doing, and what kind of research you've been up to?
Thank you, Daniel, for having me. This is fun. I see you're on the discussion boards a lot, so it's a pleasure to finally to talk to you. So a little bit about myself. I am at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay currently, and we are starting our program. It's official now. We just uh, attained our CFP board registered program approval as of a couple of weeks ago. So that's exciting news.
Congrats.
And yeah, thank you. And we have a minor that's going to hit our catalogs this coming fall. So the energy and the demand and the advisor and planner community here in Northeast Wisconsin, and at the students from our program. I mean, there's a lot of pent up demand for this type of program, and I'm telling you, I'm getting hit every which way of from interest, and it's just great. So it's good to be a part of the kind of like a solution or the progression of the profession in this area and amongst this community as well. So
Very nice. Well, and you attended Texas Tech for your doctorate, correct?
yes, so back in 2006, I went to get my master's at Texas Tech. And then after that, I went out and worked to the world of financial planning in many different aspects. I worked at a family office for a couple of years where I was co-manager of money at the firm level, about to the tune of about $120 million. But we did financial planning there as well. And that was a great learning spot because you had to be a jack of all trades there, at the administrative level, the programs that were used, the different advice. I mean, it was just a lot. So it was a good learning experience. And then I've been a wholesaler before, which helped me a lot having a financial planning background because I didn't have to wholesale, so to speak. I mean, I had to just go and meet the advisors and hear their stories, and they appreciated that I knew kind of like the financial planning process and the ethics and the way they go about serving their clients, which helped me a lot. So that really kept me in and around financial planning as well. I've started my own virtual firm, financial planning firm. It's 3 years old. And I've also just finished the PhD back at Tech. So starting at Tech and Masters, and then circling back around, 10 years later, I started the PhD and finished it in 4. So I finished that last year in personal financial planning. So, another tidbit is that I was actually introduced to financial planning at Texas Tech in my undergrad while I was at Prairie View in 2002, actually. A mentor told me about the program, and we took a trip actually to Texas Tech back in 2002. And that's when my first introduction to tech and financial planning as a whole. So you're talking about 20 years of, kind of like a cipher just rolling around, and it got us to this point and talking about research with you. So.
Sure. Well, so you've done a number of research projects, but I believe today I wanted you to come on and chat a little bit about the research you completed as part of your dissertation, and some of the publications you're working on that kind of have come from that project. So can you tell us what that was called and just sort of succinctly what that was about?
Yeah, so the research was part of it is my dissertation, and hopefully I get to publish. I've submitted one. There's 3 chapters, 3 papers, right? And I've submitted one for publication, which is under review right now, and I will submit the other 2. And it centralizes around personality traits and their associations with financial uncertainty, so to speak, uncertainty risks. And the three uncertainty risks were uh, longevity risk, which is, I've got a kind of annuities. That's what I used as my, measuring variable there. And um, being too sick, which is the end of life, long-term care, and dying too early, uncertainty of dying, which was life insurance ownership. And those were my variables that I wanted to try and investigate their associations with the big five personality traits.
Sure. Now, what made that something you wanted to research across all the different things that you could possibly look at in financial planning?
Well, it was interesting to me. First of all, I got the idea out of a hat. That was number one, because I really didn't know what to research when I started my academic journey, right? So it was a topic that really was it really fit me, because so when I saw personality, I was like, oh wow, okay, I have a little bit of a personality, so that interested me. And just investigating different types of persons and how they associate in different things, particularly personal finance. And it's been looked at previously, and so there's some established literature surrounding personality traits and personal finance, and what domains do what better, for saving and spending and impulse buying and whatnot. So when I started investigating this literature, I said, well, why not uncertainty risks? How do certain people or individuals align or associate with different risks? And and also given my background in practice and in my strengths as a practitioner, it also said, okay, my strengths are connecting and communicating and convincing, which is kind of a not convincing to the detriment of a client or anything like that. So we are fiduciaries, but convincing that in a way that they've already shared their goals with us, their needs and whatnot. So how does the planner convince them to do what they already want to do? All right, but you have to connect and communicate with them first. So those are the three C's that I kind of abide by, and this is what the research I was hoping tell us a little bit about, which is, you know, if certain personalities align with, tend to align with certain things, okay, can we have conversations with them? How do we connect with them if they do or don't align with these things? And how do we uh, create an environment where they do hear us or elevate them to what they already connect with in order to convince them to do what they already aspire to do?
Sure.
So,
I mean, I'm just thinking about all the tough conversations that you have as a financial planner, and just sort of this, I guess, sort of my experience has always been that the numbers never really seem to convince people, right? I mean, you can come along and say, look, here's my Monte Carlo analysis, and it shows that if you need long-term care when you turn 87, by the time you're 90, you're going to be bankrupt. And so I would strongly recommend looking at insuring some of that risk. And the numbers make sense. Particularly if this person tells us that they have long lives, or conversely, if they have shorter lives, and you're saying, look, life insurance probably makes a lot of sense with your family history. But people don't adopt solutions purely off of the numbers or purely off of sort of
mhm.
the rational case study. So, what were you seeing, or maybe were you not seeing in the existing research or in your experience and practice that made for kind of the decision to go forward on this research?
Yeah, that's a great take on that, Daniel. Particularly, yes, the proof is in the numbers, but the connection is not in the numbers. And if, individuals have to engage with either their present selves or future selves, and actually, that's a little bit of uh, kind of one of the personality traits is, having an imagination, right? And it's a openness to new experience is one of them. So the ocean traits, right? You had openness to new experience. You have conscientiousness, um, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, which is either the ocean traits, big five, right? They have different names, how they're addressed. But one of them is imagination. That's inside of openness to new experience. Now that can bode well for you or not, in order to imagine your future self. And it brings it back to, or even your current self, it brings you back to, how are you, and this is in my own practice experience, is how do you engage the client to where they will engage with their own journey? They have a life journey, and finances are a part of that. They may not be engaged with either, because and I call this in my practice, they're having their money lead their life instead of their life lead their money. So it's almost reactive. So how do you get them to engage in their life aspirations? It's kind of like life-centered planning and all that. How do you get them to engage in their money journey? And a little bit that is about connecting with them in a way and communicating with them in a way that says, oh, okay, yes, I need to go about this journey so I can make better decisions and better strategies in order to fund what I need to fund. And then that last step which is that implementation part, which is very hard, right? Starting is hard, and then implementing is hard. And if you've done that middle part right, which is that client communication and connecting, and you've kind of nurtured them to do the same, which is connect with their present and future selves, then maybe that convincing stage is a little bit easier.
Sure. So, when you were thinking about this, what were your expectations, or what hypotheses did you approach these research questions with?
Yeah, I based on the kind of like the theoretical basis of a personality trait theory, so to speak. And personality trait, five factor is another way of saying the ocean big five, or five factor theory. The personality trait theory has a long history of being word based, a lexical based type of theoretical process. And in short, it says, okay, we've used words from the beginning of human history. So, and the words have evolved, and we are connected in such a way that if someone explains a thing, they're going to use certain words that explains that. And if you ask 10 or 20 or 100 other people, they're probably going to use similar words to describe that thing. All right. For instance, if somebody says, okay, describe to me what barbecuing is all about. Okay. And they're going to say, oh, okay, you got to get a grill. Yeah, they're going to have some smoke. Okay. You're going to have some barbecue sauce, going to have some sticky fingers, right? You're going to have, some meat that's off the bone or whatnot. So, you're going to have all these descriptive words. Okay. This lexical basis. And pretty much everybody else is going to have those words too. So then you factor analyze those words and see what the 10 most or 15 most common words are. And you align that with barbecue. Okay. And then when you describe something else, all right, they may have similar words. Okay. And now we get to see, how those associate. Okay. So with personality traits, it's a lexical basis theory, word based. It has these five personality trait domains. Okay. Then there have facet words inside each of those domains, and then adjectives that back up those facets. Okay. So it's all word based. Okay. And many years of factor analysis have gotten it down to, probably 10 across each of the personality traits. Now, do those words, when you describe somebody of openness or conscientiousness or extroversion, etc., do those words align or don't align with some of the things you may explain, say like an uncertainty risk? So when we talk about life insurance ownership or long-term care or annuity ownership, okay, when you describe those type of environments, do the words align or don't align. And that's how you kind of find the associations of the two.
See, now that's really interesting to me because, obviously how we present things, or I guess to broaden this for a moment, the way you present a problem or present a solution, just it can be the exact same problem, the exact same solution, but two different people can describe it in two different ways and get very different responses from the audience that they're speaking to, whether it's positive framing or negative framing or something like that. I know I personally get myself in trouble just because of the semantic overload of saying, being neurotic, right? When I think about that big five trait, and I probably overuse it actually in conversation or as an adjective in of itself, because people sort of associate it or have positive or negative associations with it depending on how they feel about it or what it means to them. So, what were you thinking when you were looking at the big five traits and sort of the words around that, and sort of the problems you were trying to solve? What did you think you were going to see?
Yeah, I was trying to see, let's give an example. Like, how does excitement seeking, how does that align with risk? I mean, because then you're talking about risk liking or risk seeking and risk averse. How does that align? Okay, if somebody is and that I'm gonna look off real quick because I have this chart here, and we're talking about excitement seeking. You're talking about extroversion. Okay, now they also in extroversion you also have traits like they're gregarious. Okay, so they're outgoing. Okay, and all that. And what we saw, what's present in the literature is those, as far as those trait, the extroversion trait, and how the literature shows associations with financial behaviors. Well, extroversion is great for earning money. All right, they tend to have higher incomes, because they connect with people and they're all that. Um, so that works for higher incomes, but how does that work for savings? Okay, those are two different things. Now they tend to be not that all that good savers because they're good at earning the money, but also have a lackadaisical behavior about saving the money. They may go on impulse. Okay, um, so uh, it may be undisciplined in their approach to savings. Okay, so look at that dynamic. That's just one example, right? Um, uh, and I keep coming back to the imagination and the kind of like the fantasy and the using your imagination. There's research that shows imagination can be either good or bad, or connective or disconnective of connecting with your future self. Um, uh, you're either imagining your future self or you're dreaming. What is that? So it could go either way. Um, so, and also too, when I saw about agreeableness has trust inside of it. Okay, well, we know that in our industry, in our profession, advisors, there's not much trust there sometimes. Okay, how does that align with engaging in good financial behavior? Um, but also the domain of agreeableness, it had a lot of feeling words inside of them, so they really didn't give you any kind of direction of making a hypothesis. So when you're talking about, when you see a word like excitement seeking and extroversion, okay, I can hypothesize that is opposite of risk aversion, and maybe associating with insuring against risk. You got risk seeking not going well with risk aversion. I was like, okay, well, how does that work? And many other things too. So those are those kind of examples that I was like, okay, let me hypothesize and see what comes out.
Sure. So, how did you go about getting the data for your research? Did you have like a big five thesaurus and you walked around and asked people about their finances and then used different words, or how did you approach this?
So personality trait assessment. So luckily for me, there's personality trait assessments inside of big data, and we had what the PSID and all these other large data sets. And the one that I use that's quite popular is the HRS, which is the Health and Retirement Study. And they've been collecting data. It is a longitudinal study, although I selected just 1 year to look at. But they've been collecting data on households for many years. And in, I believe 10 years ago, somewhere around there, what is this, 2021? It hasn't been that long, but they inserted a personality trait assessment scale inside of the study and started collecting that. It's in the leave behind, actually, is what they call a leave behind questionnaire. So these households answer all the HRS questions that are in there. And then after that, they say, okay, we're going to leave this behind. And here's some more questions in different areas like personality trait, stress, anxiety, a whole bunch of other things. So there's a psychological, kind of like a money psychology assessment in the leave behind. And then they decide to answer those questions or not.
Gotcha. Okay. So then what were some of your findings? What did you see when you kind of put the data together and sort of ran your analyses?
Yeah, interesting enough, I figured that, well, I hypothesized the direction or association for each one of them. I thought there would be even more, connection, between, or association between the traits and these uncertainty risks. We did get, or the paper did find all three of them, as far as the uncertainty risk, right? We have dying too early, living too long, living too sick. So we got long-term care, annuity, and life insurance. And again, I want to make a quick point here before I share with you about my findings. Many people are saying, when I was presenting at conferences or whatnot, they're saying, oh, this is just another paper to sell life insurance or sell some sort of product. No, that's not the case. The case is just when you're having a conversation about, if somebody shares with you that they like to protect their family from early death, or say, okay, I worry about outliving my money, or I have a history of long ADL deficiencies and all that type of stuff in my family, and I worry about that as well. Okay, how can you connect with them and communicate with them in a way that aligns with their goals so they can do something about it? This is whether it be, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a product. It could be they could self fund that, and all that could be, but we had to operationalize the uncertainty risk. So that's where we are. So did find that conscientiousness across the board really associated with uncertainty risk. They have words like, and I'm gonna read a couple actually. They have words like competence, okay, dutifulness, achievement striving, self-discipline, deliberation, order. They're efficient, they're organized, not careless, all right, thorough, not impulsive, okay. These words, when you look at them, okay, if somebody is achievement striving, what does that tell us? Okay, financial planning, right? What are we all about? Goals, okay, striving to achieve goals. All right, deliberation, self-discipline. How do you go about funding those goals, right? And efficient, organized, not careless. So that goes about not impulsive. So it tells us something about risk aversion or risk seeking. All right. So how does that makes a little bit of sense about the outcomes, that conscientiousness would tell us a little bit about something about each one of the uncertainty risks. So we found in life insurance ownership, for example, that conscientiousness positively associates with life insurance ownership. And some of those words, okay, when you talk about not impulsive, okay, that's risk averse a little bit, right? When you're talking about goal seeking, goal seeking across the board can be applied to all of them, right? If you're talking about somebody, a client sits down and says, okay, let's talk about, or the advisor says, let's talk about your risk management program, okay, and somebody is conscious in their thought, okay, they have self-discipline, they can fund maybe a solution, they can either fund the goal themselves or fund a solution and a product in order to deal with this uncertainty. Uh, they want to achieve goals, all of that. Okay. So with life insurance, a positive association kind of makes sense in that regard, and both economically and kind of psychologically, with the risk aversion and the risk seeking there, that they're not impulsive. So we found a positive association in the life insurance ownership paper. And then when we found, as far as annuities, same thing. We found a positive association there, and actually the positive association was across the board, all the way, for those same explanations that I just presented. So there was no negative association in either of the uncertainty risks. So, and that made sense, and it was consistent. Now, in the other papers, for particularly the life insurance, we had some negative associations with the other personality traits in particular. So openness to new experience, that was a negative association with life insurance ownership. Extroversion was a negative association, and so was neuroticism. All right, all those were negative associations.
That's actually really interesting because I could see extroversion or openness being opposed to it, maybe because life insurance, for lack of a better phrase, maybe is a little stodgy or a little stuffy,
Hmm.
as maybe a financial concept. But neuroticism is surprising to me, right? Because there's usually all those connections to levels of stress or anxiety. Tell us more about that, because that's a really interesting sort of standout from where I'm sitting.
Yes, yep, and you're right about that too. When you talk about neuroticism, here's a word, right? We have anxiety in this domain, depression, right? Vulnerability. Uh, so some of these words, moody, okay, there's another one, contented, tense, okay, not self-confident. Um, so these are, when you're talking about you know life insurance, you're also talking about valuing yourself. Okay. So if one has to put a value on oneself, okay, and there's a lot of potential, depression and not self-confident and whatnot, if those things are present, then one may say, well, my life may not be worth insuring, so to speak. Okay. So which could counterbalance the anxiety, or the worry, aspects of neuroticism. So and you make a good point. Some of which leads me to this point. When you're talking about uh the domains, okay, they're just they individuals associate higher with one of these domains. We actually have all of these domains in us. It's, what do we greater associate with? You know, what is the stronger trait? You know, now we can also pull a trait that we don't identify with strongly. Okay, we have a less relationship with this particular trait. However, we can pull that out of a hat if the environment fits. So that trait will pop up in a short-term kind of environment and then retreat back, and then our dominant one we have a greater association with will still rear its head there, right? So I say that to say this, is that you made a great point about the anxiety aspect, the worry, right, of neuroticism, right, all this. Yet there's another part of neuroticism that's may overtake some of those other facets, intra domain.
Sure. Well, so did you find any of your results that were just surprising to you, or contradictory of your entire expectation around what you were looking, or thought you were going to find, as they related to the different types of risk management?
You know, I thought that agreeableness would would show up with some statistical significance more often than not. I thought, and because of those words like trust, straightforwardness, okay, altruistic, so altruism, you know, particularly, when you're altruistic, you have some sort of potential philanthropic thought or caring, or not even necessarily philanthropic. That's a care for others. You're altruistic, that's like a giving trait, so to speak. And I thought that protecting the wealth accumulation that one has built up uh, from uncertainty risk would kind of connect well with with those altruistic folks. Because if you insure your wealth, then you're transferring a higher amount of that to heirs, or you're have a giving aspect. Many people use risk management as a way, particularly with life insurance or whatnot, uh, or annuities, right? You joint survivor, that type of thing, to want to take care of a loved one. So I thought the altruistic trust. I thought that if there were higher levels of trust, if individuals are trusting, I thought they would engage in conversations, advice conversations. I thought that would happen there. Um, they had a couple of other ones, sympathetic, sympathy, um, warm. I thought that I thought particularly with long term care. Okay, I thought some of these facets and adjectives would connect well with some of the themes of these uncertainty risk protection aspects. So I was surprised that agreeableness didn't show up a lot more.
Sure. So I guess what's the natural progression of this research? Where does it go from here, or what's sort of the next project in line?
Well, I'm working on one right now that I think is going to be great, but I really can't reveal where it's going. But I
Okay.
because if I do, somebody may jump on it. But I'm I'm curious on where these domains, because what folks like to say is like, okay, um, personality traits can potentially change over time. They really don't tell us much. Do they tell us whether somebody's going to engage? So you probably need some intervention type of things going on. So there's that scuttlebutt going on in the research. So naturally, the research has to go to, and there has been in some research of neurobiology, so to speak. Uh, can it give us a better prediction of what personalities will do what next. I mean, but that's in planning itself, right? That's where we're advancing anyway, is anticipating. Can we use who uh, more about who and who people are, what their values are, and then what their financial aspects are and behaviors have been and are at this point. Can we use that to anticipate future things? Uh, I'm also so that's where the literature can go. I'm not necessarily, because I don't necessarily have the resources to go that far. That said, I am curious in where personality trait domains fall in, you know, or fall in other domains, money psychology domains. Okay, and if we have other money psychology domains like anxiety or other kind of personality trait type of things, like or money psychology things like KMSI or those things. Okay, where there's many other stress, a whole bunch of, where do these personality traits fit in those domains? And if they're more acceptable to the literary public or whatnot, then at least we can know where the traits fall in those, and then maybe we can make some sort of interpretation of what may be far as associations with other financial domains or environments. So
Sure.
it's
So
almost like a cross reference. It's like it's to see where do these lie in there, and if
sure.
we've made uh, interpretations or inferences from personality traits, and we made inferences from, say, anxiety or stress or other money psychology domains, then we can, maybe now that we have two inferences instead of one individually, maybe we can make a better inference.
Sure. Just deepening the field of research that's there.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, you have a virtual practice. I'm a practitioner. Most of the people listening today either are practitioners or are going to be practitioners. Cross your fingers. Hope they do well in school. What can they do with this research? What can they apply with their clients or be thinking about as they deal with real world financial planning cases?
Yeah, what I got out of the research and what my future research will will help with, I believe, and what interests me is that constant skill set building of, connecting with the client. And I sound like a broken record, but you have to, the reason, but if you can get past the trust barrier, which many folks have with the advisor, okay, then they want to be able to connect, because money is very personal. That's why it's personal financial planning. It's very personal. So uh, you have to be able to connect with the person you're working with. Then you have to learn. This is the practitioner now. You have to want to learn more about what the client is communicating to you with their values and needs. I mean, it's all part of the financial planning process, learning your client, all right, listening well and all that. What they're communicating to you, and then what are you communicating back to them? And what are some of the signals that they project of telling you about who they are, what they're about, what they value. Okay, can we better leverage, that information in order to get them where they want to go? All right, and that's that last one about the convincing. And the more it's back, it's kind of like the old school KYC, right? Know your client, and that was just at a surface level. They have, that's another measure of traits. You have surface traits, cardinal traits, and then think of the other trait, a couple other levels of traits. We've moved past KYC to suitability, so to speak, into, learning more about what you should do, not what you can do. Suitability is all about what you can do. That doesn't mean you should do it, right? So now we move past KYC into learning all these money psychologies. What can we better learn with our clients? It could be personality. You can have an assessment. You can't assess your clients to death, all right, but you can use some tools in order to learn more about. I use KMSI currently in my practice, and uh, sometimes if the time allows, or if I see the relationship can do it, I may use a personality trait analysis. I want to learn more about you, because some of those things may be either a barrier to the next move, or we may need to elevate some of those things to maximize your next move. So it's just really learning more about those three C's, Daniel.
Sure. So this is a question I haven't asked everybody who's been on the podcast, but because yours touches the big five and touches personality traits and money psychology and whatnot, and you touched on it just a moment ago. You can't assess your clients to death, but you said you use the client's money script assessment. Do you think that financial planners should be, or do you think it's more subjective and optional? But do you think they should be trying to assess their clients in some assessed or measured way, just to get a better psychological understanding of their clients, in addition to all the numerical pieces that go into the work?
Yes, yes, great question, and I do believe so. I do believe so, because it gives you some sort of, a kind of empirical basis of interpretation, because it is subjective. But if you have a lot of data on a certain thing, then maybe you can take these interpretations and put them into practice. It is learning more about it. And I said, I'll tell you, I have a money psychology meeting in my process. Um, so we get to this after, okay, you have the little 30-minute introductory, and then you have the discovery meeting where you get learning a whole bunch. They fill out a questionnaire and all that. So you get the finances. You may ask, which I do. I ask a lot of life centered planning questions and all that. And then after that, I have all the information, the data gathering, and the documents and everything like that. Now we need to take a little break, before we, because I'm going to be doing all the analysis on the numbers and all that type of stuff. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's get organized. let's see how you feel about where we are right now. Maybe you're curious, the client, about what your relationship with money is and where you want it to be and whatnot. People want to learn about themselves, and this is a journey, and it gives the client and the planner an opportunity to learn more about one another, but particularly the client to learn about themselves. They're like, I've always wondered about that. Can you tell me more about that? When you get a client to tell you, can you tell me more about that? I've always wondered about that. Oh my goodness, that's you can't beat that right there, right? And having that assessment in front of you, like I say, you can't have multiple, all right. But if you have something in front of you that opens the dialogue, it opens the vulnerableness, it opens the want to converse. That's that engagement. They're engaging with their own journey at that point. That's the importance right there. That gets the buy-in, Daniel. So when we know more, about these, money psychology areas, or the emotions or the behaviors about money, okay, that's when we get that natural buy-in from the client, and then that what makes the financial journey and an increased probability for success.
Well, I think an increased probability of success is what we're all hoping for. Dr. Cherry,
That's right.
I want to say thank you for coming on the program today. It was really great to learn from you.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for having me. Having fun.